move into onto the area of attention measurement. Human attention is a very precious resource, and grabbing this from distracted customers is often difficult, but the essential first step in advertising effectiveness. We've got two presentations today to demonstrate attention metrics and measurement and how to drive attention to advertising. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Mike Follett, the Managing Director at Lumen Research. Mike's going to inform us on how much predictive attention estimates can inform ad performance. Mike's got the screen there. Mike's going to be presenting InSkin's specific model of attention that takes into account the impact of size, time, and creative. And he's got some interesting results here from L'Oreal. Very warm welcome today, Mike.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
We can, certainly.
Very good. Well, listen, thank you very much
much
for having me, and I hope that I fare better than the lady from Google. So if I you'll tell me, I'm sure, if I start to freeze up and that. But listen, very nice to see you all. Thank you very much for your time. Yes, my name is Mike Follett. I'm the Managing Director of Lumen Research. We're an eye tracking company. We've developed some technology that turns this webcam here on your computer or this webcam on your mobile phone into a high quality eye tracking camera. We collect a load of data from large panels all around the world and turn that data into predictive models of attention. Our tech works across desktop and mobile. We have big permanent panels in the UK and the US where we pay people $10 US, £10 a month to permanently download our technology and passively track everything they do online. But then we also set up temporary panels. We set in about 3,000 to 4,000 people a week in places like France, Germany, Italy, and Indonesia is the latest one, and also in Australia. So we have lots of data from around the world to power the models that I wanted to talk to you about today. We work mainly with people on the buy side of things, so with Chanel and Adidas, a lot of British companies and a lot of companies in the States, people, big FMCG companies over there. But we also do work with publishers and platforms, and as Nat said, we're talking about some data from InSkin today. The final thing to say is a lot of our stuff is up for awards. Last week we won a big award over in London, the Media Week Awards for the sort of predictive modeling technique. I say this because I know that Rob is on afterwards. We're a company very similar to Playground. I know that they win a lot of awards as well, and Australia is very impressive in producing technology like this. Okay, so why does this matter? Fiona, you're back again. Can you hear us? Do you want?
I can.
Natalie, do you want me to kick off here? Shall I keep on going and then we can? Yeah, okay, brilliant. Well, I'll carry on going. Not at all. So why does this matter? Well, unseen is unsold. You can't buy things from advertising unless you notice the advertising. With respect, of course, to our good friends at Spotify and in radio and things like that, there is audio attention as well. But if you don't engage with things, it cannot work. And engaging with things isn't the same as it just simply having the opportunity to see, but also actually looking at things. People are very good at ignoring stuff. And in advertising, we often think that what we do is very, very important. We notice the ads that we make because our mortgages depend on it. Of course, we notice it. We're paid to notice it. The trick is to try and understand if people out there in the real world also notice this stuff. And the fact is that people are very good at ignoring things. Not just advertising, but advertising is one of the things that they are very good at ignoring. And so that is quite important to take seriously. The last thing to say is that up until recently, we have perhaps had a free pass in the world of digital advertising, because we say that even if no one saw our advertising, there is cookie data from the billions of cookies that were dropped on people's computers and phones to perhaps suggest that this ad is working, even if it wasn't viewable or it wasn't viewed or something. I'm not entirely sure that that's a very good argument, but it doesn't matter because people have been making this argument that the cookies, that's where all the data resides. Well, thanks to GDPR over in Europe and the CCPA over in the States, and the activities and the actions that Google and obviously Apple have taken, cookies are going away. Up until now, we might have been able to rely on those things, but third-party cookies are no longer going to be a big part of the advertising ecosystem. And if anyone saw the impact that is going to have on business, have a look at Snap's share price, which fell pretty dramatically upon the realization that cookies are going away on Thursday. So in the place of cookie data, suddenly contextual data becomes far more important. Being able to put a price on the context in which you place your ads, and the formats themselves. I believe that was always important, but it's now become doubly, trebly important because of the decline of and the deprecation of third-party cookies. So at Lumen, what we do is, as I say, we measure attention. We measure the opportunity people have to see things, how many impressions reach the screen and whether or not they're technically viewable or not. But we also measure if anyone actually looked, not just the opportunity to see, but if anyone did actually see it. And then crucially, not just if they saw it, but how long they saw it for. To try and help us understand the sort of aggregate of attention that people get. What we'll see in a second is that people do engage with ads, but they tend to engage with it on quite a short amount of time. Ads do still work, but they probably work in a slightly different way than the way we think they work when we force people to watch them in the pre-test that we do. So in this example here, you had 1,000 impressions, and 51% of them might be what you called technically viewable, according to the IAB. But in actual fact, despite that 510 of these things were viewable, only 99% of them actually got looked at. This little ad down here for number 7, a makeup brand over here. And then these ads might have been viewable for 5, 10, 15 seconds, but people actually only spent around about 1.6 seconds with them. And that means that's an important learning in itself, but it allows us to construct a sort of single metric where you say, well, what if I got 1,000 impressions and then 9% of people, that's 90 people looked at them for about 1.6 seconds. You do the math there and you get about 148 seconds of attention per 1,000 impressions. Now, this is be important in a second, because what you can start doing is using this same methodology to compare between media and between formats, but also between whole media as well. So we work with an amazing American company called TVision, who have a similar sort of technology to ours, but for TV. And we can create these sort of metrics for aggregate attention for all forms of advertising. So if you were to buy a 1,000 30-second TV ads, according to the data from TVision, you might get about 6,000 seconds of attention. 1,000 15-second YouTube ads might get you 4,500 seconds of attention, whereas 1,000 mobile ads might get you about 422. Using this sort of common currency across media, we have the data for digital media and press and out of home and obviously TV, you can start looking at more unusual formats like the guys at InSkin, and from the data that we've been able to collect about them, you can start seeing that these InSkin desktop formats are creating about as much attention as a pre-roll advertisement. Of course, that has quite a big implication for how much you should pay for these sorts of things. While you can compare across data like this, it's also important to know what happens at the end of this. Why is this important? And the reason we think it's important is because attention seems to relate very well to recall. A recent big study that we've done with Dentsu across both Britain and America suggests that ads that don't get looked at have a small chance of being remembered, as you may, but ads that are not just viewable, but also viewed, actually looked at, have a far higher chance of being remembered, which is one of those sorts of things that you think you've discovered something very, very important until you might, perhaps talk to your partner or your friends down the pub about it, and they go, that's obvious, isn't it? I mean, that's bloody obvious. And indeed it is, but it's nice to have some numbers to go with it. The second thing is that when you get people to choose between options having been exposed to advertising, unless they look at the ads, they are very much, it's almost impossible to influence their brand choice. And so the same study with Dentsu had a look at ads that are viewable but not necessarily viewed, but then also looking at the impact on brand choice amongst ads that were not just viewable but also actually viewed. And then over in Britain, and globally actually, it works everywhere. We've been working to develop tags and sort of DSP plugins to link to sales. I know that's something that Rob is going to talk about as well, because I think it's a similar sort of thing that they have done at Playground. So I won't steal his thunder about that, but it's exactly the same sort of approach. And we find that the ads that people are predicted to look at are also the ones that people buy from. The key thing, though, is what are the drivers of attention here? And there are many of these things. There's size, there's time in view, and there's movement or video. There's skippability. There's device. There's many factors that go into this. The challenge for us, being able to predict attention, is understanding that all of these things happen at exactly the same time. You can't have form without content. You can't have size without time in view. It's always there. And so we try and build a predictive model that allows us to isolate all of these variables all at once. And we find that in the model that we've built for InSkin and others, we find that time is the single most important factor. Then things like skippability, movement, space, and how much the screen is taken over is about fourth or fifth thing, the device type, and then many other factors, including which website and the nature of the domain that it is on. These models can then be built into a tag that we can deploy on people's creatives and predict levels of attention based on all of these factors firing at the same time. So that's what our tag does, and I won't go into that too much, because you can put this on your creative, and this is exactly what InSkin and many others do to understand the level of viewability and the viewable factors that go into that, and then link that to estimates of how much your ad is actually being viewed, how that links to the cost of attention and the outcomes of attention. So not just understanding how much you're paying for different ads and whether that's a bargain or not, but also how that links to clicks and conversions and brand lift studies and things like that. The challenge, though, is that while we can predict an awful lot, creative is tremendously important as well. And so what we've also had to understand is the nuance that is added by doing by adding creative. And so we regularly build bespoke models for clients, such as InSkin, and in this case at L'Oreal, where we ask people, where we conduct tests about how people engage with individual bits of creative or whole campaigns or whatever, to build brand-specific models of attention. This is exactly what we did with InSkin just recently in Australia. This is one of our most recent Australian studies that we did last month. And we can start seeing the sort of attention data that you get. This is from 300 Australian women, all who perhaps might see it on a different website, which is why the website is a bit different there. But you get a feeling of how much attention is actually going to these skins and how it works across both desktop and mobile. And conducting these tests allows you to start making brand-specific models of attention. What we can see here is that the Garnier ads that we tested have done extremely well. They collected tons and tons of attention. I know as much as 20 times more than desktop display ads there. Not quite as much as some of the others that InSkin we've seen with InSkin, but it's still an extremely impressive result there. And this, I think, is super, super important because, as I'm sure other people have said before, and as other people will say again, the media part of the question is tremendously important, but the creative is also very important. And to try and unpick those two things is perhaps a fool's errand. So I'll conclude, but thank you very much for your time, to say just a couple of things. The first is that as an industry, we have been using, I think, fairly shonky statistics about how our campaigns work, using just impressions or even viewable impressions. But in actual fact, we know that there is a big difference between what people could see and what they do, in fact, look at. Within that, we spend an awful lot of time working out if anyone's noticed it, but perhaps less time thinking about how long they've noticed it for. Attention is always attention through time, and that's something that's tremendously important to take seriously. It's also important to realize that the same ads or the same the campaigns can be served against different publishers or against different formats, and these are not created equal. Some formats, some publishers are much better at making sure that your ads get noticed than others. And so simply counting the impressions and then imagining that they're all the same is not a good way of going forward. And then finally, there is now something we can do about this. The tags and the DSP plugins that Lumen and others have produced allow us to buy and measure and optimize attention rather than simply impressions. This has been something perhaps we've known about for a long time, but we've never been able to do anything about. But the rise of attention companies like Lumen and indeed Playground allow us to actually act on this insight in real time and achieve real business results. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll pass over to Rob or back to Fiona.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was great. And thank you to InSkin as well and L'Oreal for sharing those results with us today.